All right, I'd like to welcome everybody to the May 15th, 2025 Land Use and Natural Resources Committee meeting. We'll start off with the pledge. Everybody could please stand. Salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. If we could have the clerk please call the roll.
Yes, directors, when I call your name, please indicate your presence. Director Bradford, absent. Houlihan.
Here.
Clark Kretz.
Here.
Maple.
Here.
Teeter. Villegas.
Here.
Vice Chair Hume, absent. Vice Chair Kozlowski, absent. Chair Bates.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. All right, moving on to the public communication. This is a time for anyone who wishes to address the board on an item that does not appear elsewhere on this agenda. Is there a member of the public that wishes to comment at this time?
There's no public comment at this time.
All right, now, last bit of housekeeping before we start to get onto the main agenda, disclosures. This is time for any director to disclose any conflicts of interest on items on the agenda. Any conflicts? All right. Seeing none, we'll move on now to take up the consent calendar. Clerk, is there anyone from the public who wishes to remove an item from public comment?
There's no
Before
public comment. No public comment on this item.
No. All right, so I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent calendar. All right. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Do we need a roll call, or since not everybody's here?
You can do an all in favor vote since.
Okay. So all in favor of moving the consent calendar, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. All right. So now we're on to our main action item here, agenda item number 2, release of the draft of 2025 Blueprint and Environmental Impact Report. Clint Holston, the SACOG staff, will you please present the item?
Yeah, and I've got just a brief PowerPoint for you to kind of walk through a little bit of what's in this plan, what got us here to today. So just give me a second to get that pulled up. Awesome. More technical difficulties trying to advance slides here.
Apologies, everyone. We're having some technical difficulties. Please stand by. Oh, here we go.
Yeah, there we go. Maybe. All right, now we can start. So recommendation before you, staff is recommending that this committee recommend our board authorize us to release the draft plan and the accompanying environmental impact report for a 55-day public review comment period. So just by way of quick refresher, one of the first things the board did back in 2022 was to adopt this triple bottom line policy framework. So really focus the discussions and the analysis of this plan around these co-equal goals of advancing environmental interests, economic development, and equity. We were able to get state legislation to take an additional nearly 2 years to work on this plan, and we used that time to go do a lot more public outreach than we have for really any of these plans since we've been doing them. We were able to reach over 6,000 residents across the region, hear their concerns, and really make sure those were weaved into both the analysis that we've done and also into the forecasts and the policies and the implementation actions in this plan. This plan is not kind of the starting place. This is kind of an ongoing process. These are living documents. So this plan is an update. We last adopted a plan in 2020 with these 4 strategic priority areas. These became then part of SACOG's strategic plan that the board adopted in 2022. to advance, to continue these strategic priorities. And this is what the 2025 blueprint is also based on. These are how we organize our policies and our implementation actions around building vibrant places, the next generation of mobility solutions, modernizing the way we pay for transportation because we know that revenues are in decline, but costs are on the increase, and then making sure that we're building and maintaining a safe system that works for all of our residents. So what is in the plan briefly is, what is SACOG? What is this plan? We wanted to, because public outreach and engagement was such a large part of this plan, we really wanted to highlight how it fed into this plan. So there's a chapter dedicated to that. And then it gets into kind of the requirements of what this plan needs to do. So it outlines this land use, housing, jobs vision for the region. It marries a transportation vision to that, a financially constrained transportation vision. Chapter 5 talks about how those two elements, the land use elements and the transportation elements, work together to achieve the objectives of the plan, including reaching our state mandated greenhouse gas reduction target. And then we get into the policies and implementation actions. How does this plan actually kind of hit the ground running? So what does this plan do? It is intended to identify consistent supportive actions across all the players in the region, from state down to local levels. This is not something that SACOG can or does implement on our own, though we're there at every step of the way to support where we can through funding, technical assistance, advocacy, things like that. It is importantly financially constrained. We know that there's more than double the amount of needs and wants in the region compared to what we have the ability to pay for. So this plan lays out a phasing strategy for how we can afford to advance the goals that we are able to achieve. And then it demonstrates, importantly, alignment with federal and state requirements. And this is more than just important for being eligible for federal and state programs. Being consistent with the plan is kind of the bar you have to pass to be eligible, but being supportive with the plan, being part of a larger vision that accomplishes these things, and then being able to talk about how a local project or effort or planning effort fits into that and contributes to that vision is where you get past eligibility and into competitiveness. And that's what this plan is designed to help local agencies and partners around the region do. What it does not do is supersede your local decision-making over land use, transportation decisions. That is still vested with local agencies. The other thing it does not do, while it is financially constrained and it lays out a strategy for investing in transportation, none of these funds are not guaranteed. So we do need to go out and go after the federal and the state grants, the regional grants, raise our own money, and identify ways to pay for these projects in the plan. So it absolutely is not designed to be a plan that sits on the shelf. We have to actively implement this plan. Just a quick refresh on where we've been to get to this point today. Last year was really digging into our land use forecast and our transportation forecast. We spent the first half of the year really digging in on the land use side, working with cities and county staff around the agency, around the region on what land use projects are coming down the line, what we needed to know about local planning to inform our own assumptions. The board adopted our land use strategy in June. Then we took the second half of the year to really focus on marrying a transportation vision, again, working with local staff around the region to identify all the transportation investments and programs that marry up to that land use strategy. And we adopted those in November, which meant we came into 2025 with our kind of major components, our land use and our transportation components of the plan built. We had to marry the implementation policies and strategies to that. So we spent the last couple of months having those conversations. All of that is now wrapped up into a draft plan that we're asking you to release this month. The official review period, should the board go ahead and release this, would be June 6th to, you can't see it there, but August 8th. During that time, we'll go back into the region. We're going to host a couple of workshops in June, largely to circle back with the community-based organizations that helped us with all the outreach we did over the last couple of years, but we're also inviting the public and local agencies to that. So these are open houses to really dive into the plan. We will have 3 public hearings for the plan and the EIR during that time. We're also going to the advisory committees that SACOG has, our regional planning partnership, transit coordinating committee. where you have staff from your local agencies, all the transit operators are there to make sure that they're not just aware of the plans is out for comment, but to really bring their attention to the policies and the implementation strategies. Because again, SACOG can't do those things alone. And we want to make sure we get feedback that these are going to work for the entire region. So we'll hit those groups up, and then we'll also make additional effort to meet with local agencies. So we have quarterly meetings with Public Works and DOTs. We'll make sure we get with economic development or community development and the planning side of agencies to make sure that everybody is aware that they have an important opportunity to weigh in on the policies of the plan. We'll come back this fall to walk through what we heard during that public review period from all of our partners. We should also hear from the federal and state government and from ARB during that time. We'll come back and tell you what we heard, what changes we need to make to the plan, and then hopefully adopt in November, which will then allow us to submit all of our final documentation to CARB on our greenhouse gas targets, and then we're off to the races on implementation. So at SACOG, that means continuing our programs like Green Means Go to invest in kind of the underground infrastructure to unlock infill potential, investing in our Ready Set Trails program, EEI, mobility zones, but also going after those really important federal and state grants and making sure that we're putting our best foot forward and prioritizing projects to bring money into this region. So again, recommendation in front of you today is to go ahead and recommend that the board release the plan for its required 55-day public review and comment period. And then with that, we'd be coming back to you in the fall.
Great.
I'll stop there for any questions.
Is there a director that has any questions or comments at this time? Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Yeah.
Two.
Well, first of all, thank you. It's been, it's nice to see kind of the progression and the timeline laid out the way that you have. It seems like we've stuck to it for the most part. So quick question on the EIR. I know there were some questions raised by the board a while back. It sounds like there was a subcommittee. There was some reviews of kind of how that sort of competitive nature evolved. That's all been addressed for the most part. Is that something for James, or is that?
I can start. I believe so. So when we're coming to originally release the RFP for the consultant for our EIR team, the board had questions about, we hadn't made final decisions on what we wanted the plan to be yet. And so it rubbed the boards as strange as going after the consultant beforehand. We did bring on 2 board members, Jill Gallardo and Desmond, to join that recruitment. I don't want to put words in their mouth, but when they came back and reported to the board, they felt very comfortable with the process that we had.
Got it.
It's really the plan that is the policy document you're weighing in on. The EIR is more the disclosure document.
Fair enough. Okay, yeah, just checking on that. And then just a comment, I think it's a good idea that you're going back, as you indicated here, that you're going back to the stakeholders, the public input folks who actually contributed, which was part of the original ask for additional authorization legislation for additional time. We went out, we did you guys did a lot of amazing work and held public workshops, and it's good that you're going back out to let folks know kind of where it is now, because oftentimes it's kind of a one and done. They don't know what happens with their input and how it gets sort of packaged into this process. And so it's good that you guys are going back out and letting folks know, here we are again, a year later-ish, and here's where it is, and here's where it's headed by the end of the year. So,
Great.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, we had staff actually came out to Sutter County on Tuesday to our board meeting and gave a great presentation. Had a couple really cool pictures in the presentation, and I appreciated it.
I
Right,
think, yeah.
those group pictures from Sac State,
Uh-huh.
and they put the Kings jerseys on all of us on the second one, but anyways, but go ahead, you have a question?
Thank you, Chair. More just a comment. I just really wanted to say, I know I'm newer here, but I wanted to say thank you for all the work that's gone into this. It's not lost on me how long it has taken you and how much work it's gone in to get to even this point, and there's still some to go. So I just really want to congratulate you and applaud you on your work. Thank you. And I also am looking forward to hearing what we get back and see how that gets incorporated into the plan as well. So thanks.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions from the board? All right, are there anybody from the public that wishes to comment on this item?
There's no public comment.
All right, seeing none, then I'm looking for a motion to approve staff's recommendation, and if you could please state your name for the record. All right, in a second. By Villegas. All right, then moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Passes unanimously.
Chair Baines, just to build on that, and thank you, Director Maple, I want to thank all the staff here for the last 3.5 years of work on getting it to where it is now. Or to release, as Clint said, for a 55-day public comment period. And as Clint also said, and we talked to you about the last couple of months, right? We do not want a plan to just be a plan and not actually implement or execute, right? And so we do have a bit of a window, a bit of a slightly longer window this plan cycle, as we've said to you before, that gives us time to actually work on what it means to implement this plan. And the themes, especially with you on this committee, are going to be very familiar, right? They are, our transportation system is deteriorating. We don't have all the money we need to do everything we want to do. Safety was a huge theme that's come up again and again. Transportation safety, traffic fatalities and injuries, housing and the lack of housing availability and affordability. So those are all things that we cannot do alone. Like SACOG won't fix all those things, right? We need partnerships. The other one, by the way, is transit. So as we've talked about with our transportation committee, we have a fiscal cliff facing some of our larger transit agencies. We need those transit agencies to be healthy. We need to help increase ridership and figure out everything we can do. So we will be back in front of you and really all your staff and partner agencies over the summer to actually figure out what does a shared implementation strategy look like so that we can hit the ground running by the time we hope the board adopts in November. And it really is like the all team, all purple effort. So those thanks for all your recognition.
Thank you. We're now going to move on to the information section of the agenda. The next item is information item only. It's item number 3, a briefing on process to update the water forum agreement. Clint Holston again, SACOG staff will present the item.
Yes, thank you, Chair Baines, Casey Lazan on your staff. And I've got here an information and presentation for you about the effort to update the Water Forum agreement. The agreement itself is going to be called Water Forum 2050. SACOG was invited about 3.5 years ago now to participate in the update of this along with many other stakeholders in the region. And that agreement has been developed over that time period. It's coming to its final creation altogether, and SACOG, along with all of the other agencies and organizations that participated, will be invited to become a signatory to that. And so we thought it was timely to have an information briefing for you on that process. And so we've invited Ashley Casey, the executive director of the Water Forum, to come give you a little bit of history on the Water Forum in case some of you aren't aware of it, and then also the process that has happened to date. Go ahead, Ashley.
Thank you. Yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you for having me here today, and that was a really nice setup from Casey. Yeah, so I'm Ashley Casey. I'm the executive director for the Sacramento Water Forum, and I will today be going over advancing. Is this not on? Hopefully.
You'll get there.
Okay. A little bit about the Water Forum, who we are and the work that we do, how we were formed, and then we'll spend most of my time talking about the new agreement, how it's structured, what's included, and why we see it as being important for the region.
It's coming.
While we wait for that, I'll just say a little bit about the Water Forum. The Water Forum was started, the negotiations for the original agreement started, there we go. Thank you. The negotiations, thank you so much, for the original agreement started back in the 1990s at a time in our region where there was a lot of conflict, a lot of litigation all around our shared resource of water. There were those that really wanted to ensure that the Lower American River was protected, and those that were very focused on regional water supply reliability, and looking for ways to align those versus put them at odds with each other is how the Water Forum agreement was envisioned. And the regional leaders at the time had the awareness to say, you know what, we're going to accomplish more and protect our resource better if we work together. And so they spent 7 years negotiating the first agreement, and it was finalized and signed in 2000 and has been in place for the last 25 years. Through that agreement and the vision that was laid out by those negotiators, the region has advanced numerous projects and programs that do further the missions of protecting the Lower American River, and ensuring regional water supply reliability. Some, just to name a few, we have the Flow Management Standard was a Water Forum-led initiative that provides essentially guidelines for operating Folsom Reservoir in a way that balances the needs of regional water supply with the health of the Lower American River. We have worked hard to get that implemented through engagement with reclamation and different regulatory processes. We have our habitat program that leads the installation and management of salmon habitat in the Lower American River, which they wouldn't be able to complete their life cycles in the river without. Not only that, those are important for the health of the river, but collaboration amongst our regional water agencies, business interests, and local public interests have all come together through Regional Water Authority, SGA, the local groundwater management entities were also formed with their roots firmly in the Water Forum. So this legacy agreement that we have been able to implement the last 25 years is set to expire in 2030. And so that alone would trigger a round of new negotiations, but knowing the challenges that we face related to climate change was a big driver for starting the negotiations to revitalize, update, and bring current the Water Forum Agreement. So we know with climate change, we are all facing significant challenges with the rising temperatures. The snowpack will be diminished. Inflows into Folsom Reservoir are expected to come sooner, faster, more intense, and those dry periods are expected to be more prolonged and more pronounced. And with that, storage in Folsom Reservoir will become more challenging. The water will be harder to capture and harder to keep there. That threatens both regional water supply reliability and the health of the Lower American River, and not in insignificant ways. Climate modeling shows that to be very, very challenging to sustain the health of the river and just to avoid shortages within the region. So that is a huge challenge, but in addition to that, the regulatory landscape has changed significantly since 2000. So I think everybody knows as it relates to water management, there's new regulations for water conservation, for groundwater management, that the original agreement had envisioned, they had a framework that it provided in those topics to try to help guide the region to manage our resources in a way that was sustainable. There's now regulations in place that help to guide that at a statewide level. So making sure that the agreement is modernized to reflect those and add value for our region and not create redundancy was a big goal in the negotiations. So in the negotiations and the update to the agreement, we've maintained the commitment to the co-equal objectives as they were envisioned in the 1990s. And those are how they were worded then, and that is how we are carrying them forward, with the exception of the year. So provide reliable and safe water supply for the region's economic health and plan development through the year 2050. Previously, it said 2030, so now bringing it over to the next 25 years. The second is to preserve the fishery, wildlife, recreational, and aesthetic values of the Lower American River. A lot of our work is focused on the fisheries, but we do also have work related to wildlife. We have representation in our environmental caucus that are very, very focused on the recreational and aesthetic values of the Lower American River, and work to balance those in the work that we do, knowing that the value that the river and the parkway provide for the region in terms of economic development is very important beyond just the health of the fishery. So as we've worked through the negotiations, as Casey said, SACOG's been participating for about 3.5 years. I think the conversation started with our original members, I think 5 years ago. We've looked for ways to maintain the work that the Water Forum has done historically, and also as I've said, looking for ways to make sure that we make those current, modernize the agreement, and position the Water Forum in the region to respond to the challenges of climate change. So I'll talk a little bit about each of these 5 program areas that are structured and built into the new agreement. But I want to point out that the American River Climate Adaptation Program is a new area that the Water Forum is including in the new agreement that was not a part of the original agreement, that is generated a lot of enthusiasm and there's a lot of momentum behind it with our members. The other 5 program areas, which I'll speak to, are really that continuation of our work and making it current. And the RCAP is where I think there's a lot more innovation and creative thinking in terms of how the Water Forum can continue to protect the co-equal objectives. So thinking about RCAP is what it's being called for short, American River Climate Adaptation Program. Ultimately, it's looking for opportunities to leverage regional actions to support the co-equal objectives. And doing that by creating and deploying measurable quantities of water to either bolster storage in Folsom Reservoir, supplement flows in the Lower American River, create more suitable temperature conditions for the fish in the river. Knowing that we don't own and operate Folsom Reservoir, which is so central at the crux of the co-equal objectives, trying to look for opportunities to take a more active role in how we preserve the co-equal objectives is how RCAP came about. We know that it's ambitious. We know that it will require a good amount of analysis and exploration in order to really identify what those opportunities are, what their potential benefits could be, and what the feasibility and approach would be to get it implemented in a way that is most protective to the co-equal objectives. The agreement essentially provides a framework for this work to begin and to engage our members across all of our interests to come together to work towards this goal of having an active role and a measurable quantity of water that we can use as a safeguard for the region against worsening climate change conditions. This is a cross-cutting initiative is how I would describe it across all 5 of our program areas that are in the agreement that is in it of itself. So going into each of the program areas, I won't belabor this because I know you guys have an agenda, but I'll just say a little bit about each one. The American River Flows and Operations is the area where we really seek to advance the understanding of the needs advance the understanding of the opportunities to balance regional water supply reliability with the health of the river. So a big part of that work is our flow management standard. That's based on the latest science, tools, data, and looking at different analyses that will develop storage targets in Folsom Reservoir based on the hydrology for certain times of the year, provides minimum reservoir releases out of the reservoir into the Lower American River to balance, we don't want to release so much that we compromise water supply reliability, but we want to release enough to safeguard the fish and the habitat that rely on the river. So depending on the hydrology, the FMS outlines flow releases for every month of the year, among other things. The flow management standard is being implemented by Reclamation, and the Water Forum is at the heart of those conversations and making sure that it's interpreted and implemented in the way that it was envisioned. Other areas within the flows and ops is exploring and advocating for flexible flood operations, knowing that climate change will change our hydrology from historical trends significantly, and making sure that we look for opportunities to respond to that. Beyond that, I'd say there's, improving understanding as it relates to infrastructure for water quality and temperatures, and then just ongoing coordination and collaboration with the Bureau of Reclamation and other partners. The next is the American River Corridor Health, and this is the framework with which we hope to continue our habitat program, where we have been very successful in implementing salmon habitat in the Lower American River. In recent years, I'd say in the last 10 years, our habitat sites account for 30 to 60% of the in-river spawning that happens in the Lower American River. So it's incredibly important for those fish to be able to complete their life cycle in the river. As I think probably you all understand, the dam cuts off what would have been their natural habitat upstream. And so they are constrained to the 23 odd miles of the Lower American River, whereas it would have been hundreds of miles upstream. So, making sure that those ecosystems and that habitat is maintained in a way that's suitable for them does require active management. And the Water Forum has been the leader in that. So the Corridor Health ensures that work can continue. The third program area is regional water supply sustainability. This is an area that I'd say the regulatory landscape has evolved the most since the original agreement was signed. At the time the original agreement was negotiated, SGMA didn't exist. The Water Forum agreement outlined a sustainable yield, levels of extraction for purveyors, and tried to form essentially what are GSAs now. so we have Sigma now. So ultimately, I would say, among other things, there's other regulations that have changed since then. But going forward, the way we have, what has been identified as the area that, the way the water forum can add the most value in this topic is to continue to promote and advance expanded conjunctive use within the region. So allowing our water agencies to shift between surface water and groundwater based on the hydrology to protect both resources to the degree we can. Provide a structure for the region to come together in critically dry times, the dry time actions, knowing that in those times, there will be a need for creative problem solving in real time. We can't anticipate exactly what condition will present itself and how best to manage it. So providing that framework for the not just the water agencies, but the environmental interests, the business groups to come together and discuss what they're seeing and what the most effective response might be. The part for you, this group as the Land Use and Natural Resources Committee that might be most interesting here. The original agreement included a process for land use decisions to be informed, to be better informed in terms of available water, and the water forum being a place where that could happen to bring those interests together. Obviously, now there are numerous processes in place that help to link up that information between different interests and decision makers. So that is not, the water forum doesn't need to be in that role anymore. But what was identified with our negotiators was an opportunity for the water forum to be almost like a clearinghouse of data and information related to water supply demand, water demands and supplies as they are projected within the urban water management plans, to be able to provide that holistic regional perspective as it is presented in other public documentation, to just, and help make that available to help inform land use decisions. So there's much within the water forum agreement that is of that nature of consolidating, aggregating otherwise disparate pieces of information into a regional perspective, and land use is one of them. So 2 more program areas to speak to, hopefully. Okay, science monitoring. Over the last 15 to 20 years, especially, the water forum has been a leader for just, I'd say, science and data on the Lower American River. Through our habitat program, we needed to do different analyses and data collection in order to be able to get that work permitted and constructed. So there is, modeling in terms of river flows that has been conducted and made available, data collection for bathymetry and topography within the parkway that is helpful to other processes and decision making, but also biological data for the fish that use the river, being able to look at their DNA and see where they have been and what they need within our river, is another area that has been, I'd say, fairly cutting edge and innovative. Last one I'll just mention is water quality. Dissolved oxygen is an important parameter that the fish and other processes within the river rely on, that there was not much data available, and over the last couple of years has become an emerging issue that the water forum was able to get in the river, get sensors, collect the data, and then make it available to reclamation and others to help inform their operations. So making sure this work continues was important. The last one is the governance, finance, and administration. I'll just say, representing so many different organizations, having strong governance is really important. There was some structure there was good structure provided in the original agreement, and making sure that that is continued and updated as we have seen to be necessary just based on implementation. And then making sure the funding is sustainable. Most of our funding comes from the regional water purveyors that all pay a share towards the staff operations and programs that we implement. But there is also other funding that comes from other public agencies and people, members who are able to provide in that way. The last one is through what we call GFA, Governance, Finance, and Administration, just providing a framework for ongoing public engagement and transparency. The water forum is most successful if we can make our work and data and information available and improve overall understanding of the challenges and the opportunities going forward. So including that going forward as well. The last thing I'll just say is that, as Casey said, we're at this final stage. There's a draft of this agreement that's out with our negotiators right now for review. We're collecting comments. We're very hopeful that we're getting close to the end of the negotiation and are ultimately going to be inviting all of our negotiators to sign and support the Water Forum 2050 agreement as an opportunity to continue to build on the 25 years of successful collaboration in protecting the co-equal objectives. We see RCAP as a really exciting opportunity to create a regional vision that will help to bring us together, focused on the co-equal objectives, and really look for those opportunities for active engagement and action to protect the co-equal objectives. So with that, last slide, I'll just say that I didn't officially say we have 4 caucuses, just to give you an example of the breadth of our membership within the Water Forum. We have a business caucus that is business interests within the region, the North State Building Industry Association, Sac Metro Chamber. Environmental caucuses are 4 major environmental interests as they relate to the Lower American River. The Public Caucus, which SACOG is a participant in the negotiations, and then the Water Caucus, which is most of our regional water agencies and all of those that rely on the American River, in addition to others that are primarily groundwater, our Sacramento River water. So the stars denote those that were signatories to the original, and then this is a list of those that have been participating in the negotiations. Any questions?
All right, is there anyone that, from the public that wishes to comment on this item?
There's no public comment.
Bring it back to the board, comments or questions?
Just a comment. But go ahead, you get 2.
Thank you. No, I was just gonna say, fascinating. I really had never heard of anything like this, so thank you so much. Is there something similar on the other side of the river, up the hill? Is there something similar to your organization?
Not that I'm aware of. Placer County and EID do both participate in the Water Forum. But in terms of the environmental interests and others, up the hill is an area that I'm not as familiar with.
Okay, no, fascinating. Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
I would agree, fascinating and timely. And I think it's appropriate, more than appropriate, that we're hearing this conversation at a time when, rather than in time of crisis, like 5-6 years ago, when we were talking about Deadpool, people had no idea what Deadpool meant until they discovered pretty quickly it might mean you run out of water, drinking water kind of thing. And then the questions are around, well, what do you mean? Folsom, always has water. In fact, sometimes it has too much water. And so these conversations are timely when we're not in the heat of the moment, I think. So now is like the perfect time to talk about water and maybe even water rights and water history and different regulatory frameworks, because it is incredibly complicated and litigious and not for drinking, but for fighting. Is that right? What we're going to say? And so exactly, I know he was going to say that. But I think it's important because as we contemplate kind of adopting and being very proud of the work that we're doing with the blueprint, none of it matters unless there's water. And as we figure out what this looks like in light of the whiplash weather systems that we've all agreed everything's adapted, everything has an adaptive component built into it, because nobody knows. We're fighting one minute because we're flooding and the next because we're fighting over, Deadpool status. So I think it's timely and thank you, Mr. Chair, for having as part of for today's conversation. I think it's one that ought to be embedded as part of the broader board governance conversations as well. Because just one session on the history of pre-14 water rights will blow your head apart, just to try to untangle what that means. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you. And can I respond? I'll just offer quickly things. That 2014, that when things are super, or 2021, when everything is super contentious and there's maybe a lack of understanding. Something we've talked about is RCAP as being an opportunity to do work outside of those times to protect ourselves from those times. But we do within the agreement have tried to provide a structure for engagement and collaboration when we do get there. So thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Great presentation, and I agree it's timely when we're not as worried. It's always looming, but it's not necessarily crisis level. But how are you funded?
Great question.
Thank you.
Yeah, the water agencies do fund, each of them. So we had a funding model within the original agreement that relied on something within the county called Zone 13 funding that was argued to cover some of the water agencies within that area. And then it was Zone 13, the city of Sacramento, and a couple other small amounts from other water agencies. For the new agreement, we are distributing that more broadly to all of the water agencies. They're all now paying based on a cost allocation model that was developed as part of the negotiations that's based on Connections 5-year averages for groundwater extractions and American River diversions to try to reflect the value that they are getting from their participation in the water forum. That makes up 95% of our expected funding each year. We are working with the signatories as we go, or the participants of the negotiations who hopefully will become signatories, to think about what agencies can also contribute to funding, because it does strengthen the water forum if we do have more diverse funding, even small amounts. But not all of our participants are able to. We have NGOs, nonprofits, League of Women Voters, Save the American River Association. It's not meaningful, and it's, they donate a lot of their time as volunteers. So we're still working through that. But for now, the water agencies are the bulk. But SAFECA also funds, SMUD is also a funder at this point.
Great, thank you.
I just had a comment. I'm in a Delta, and like our controversy is like flooding or potential flooding, even though Ileton hasn't flooded in like since '72. But what's your take on the tunnels?
Oh, no, I mean, we don't have a position. The water forum doesn't have a position. We have a really diverse membership. So there's differing views amongst our membership, I would say, on the tunnels. And so as staff, I don't have one.
All right, well, thank you, Ashley. Great presentation.
Yeah.
Very informative, and obviously everybody really appreciated it, so thank you so much.
Chair
Yes,
Baines,
sorry,
sorry, if I can make just a couple more comments. So one, I want to Director Clark Kretz's question, just to put a finer point on it. Since this is about the Lower American River watershed, the Placer County water agencies that are involved in the watershed are members, right? In the current agreement, and they are participating.
Yes.
Right, in the update of the agreement. So, great, yeah. And then the last thing I wanted to share is that this is an information item for you to sit to understand, like, this has been work, a long time underway. And as I said at the beginning, the agreement is getting put together. And so we, as your staff, we will be recommending that SACOG be a signatory to it. We think, I think to Director Vegas's comments, we have found it valuable to be able to be part of this conversation that's about stewarding our resources, because when we do our planning, it is very helpful to be able to say that this region will continue to grow, and to be able to say we have, these systems and processes and relationships in place to ensure that. So we think it's a valuable thing that we would bring forth later.
Thank you.
And
Thank you very much.
if I can just add on to that
Yes,
too,
sure.
we actually, back in 2019, we did a somewhat quick exercise to look at infrastructure needs across all asset classes in this region. It was actually when President Trump in 2018-19 and Speaker Pelosi at the time both said, we want $1 trillion infrastructure bill. So we thought, how do we prepare our needs regionally? And we worked with flood control agencies and water agencies and SMUD and the utilities, right? It's actually pretty cool to go across all asset classes and look at what was ready. Through that, we developed a great relationship with the Regional Water Authority, RWA. And when Green Means Go came up, that relationship, right, that collaboration enabled us really to have a window into a lot of the water agencies and water supply, and looking at the lack of available water supply and the right kind of infrastructure in our infill areas. So again, I think part of our thinking, and Casey has been the one that's been involved in this, is a collaborative effort that has a lot of support. And so we, I think, see a lot of value in being a part of this in an ongoing way.
Yeah, go ahead.
Ashley, did you say they're measuring dissolved oxygen? Yes. That is incredibly interesting. I don't know, that's, anyway,
Yeah.
one of the things I just thought, wow, I didn't even know about that, so.
Yeah. No, it's really important for obviously the fish need that to
Right.
be able to breathe. That's
Right, but to be able to, very cool.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, one last comment.
Sorry. Thank you for the presentation. Really interesting. And I'm just wondering, is there a possibility for maybe one or several of us to go and do a little tour, maybe kind of see some of this in action?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give you my card and then maybe
Yeah.
coordinate.
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, so we have our habitat sites along the river, which I think is probably the most powerful place to tour. So yeah, we can definitely set that up. That'd be great.
Perfect. All right, last shot. Teeter, anybody else? All right, we're gonna move on. Okay, next item is information item number 4, 2025 Blueprint Tour Wrap-Up and Jurisdiction Highlights. Hannah, student, SACOG staff will present the item.
Hello,
Hello,
can everybody hear me okay?
you sure can.
Hello, my name is Hannah Chuden. I'm the outreach coordinator for the 2025 Blueprint. And over the past several months, we've been attending board and councils meetings across the region to discuss the 2025 Blueprint. These conversations were more than just presenting a plan. They were about listening and hearing what local electeds' priorities are and identifying how local projects align with regional goals. Today, we're going to reflect on what we heard and, more importantly, show how those insights are already taking shape through the projects your jurisdictions are working on. Across the 23 jurisdictions we visited so far, a few themes have emerged from the feedback we received from our local electeds: housing and land use, transportation needs, climate resilience and sustainability, funding and resources, and regional collaboration. One message we tried to emphasize at every stop of the tour was that the Blueprint isn't a top-down plan. Its success depends on jurisdictions implementing it. What we're doing is stitching together projects and priorities that you are already pursuing. Today, I'll cover just a few of the projects we identified in collaboration with local jurisdiction staff that really exemplify the goals and objectives of the 2025 Blueprint. They'll only mention a few projects. The plan will feature highlights from all of the cities and counties around the region to show what Blueprint implementation looks like at the local level. So let's take a closer look at how those regional themes you raised are already being reflected in local projects. Starting with housing and land use, there's a broad recognition that while a region will continue to grow, that rate of growth will be happening more slowly over time. And that means more focus on infill, revitalization, and preserving open space. In Citrus Heights, the Sunrise Tomorrow plan is reimagining a declining mall into a 21st century Main Street with homes, jobs, parks, and a community identity. This is a reinvention of the city's core. And in Auburn, the Dome's infill area is being designed for higher density housing right next to the multimodal transit center with public enthusiasm for affordability and smart design that reflects the community's character. But it's more than just projects that were funded by Green Means Go. In Woodland, the Research and Technology Park is providing jobs, housing, and an innovation space right next to UC Davis and the Woodland Community College, which will help us retain local talent while growing strategically. From transit expansions to trail connections to roadway safety, mobility remains a top priority. We heard loud and clear that communities want better transit access, especially outside of city cores. Yuba Sutter Transit is building a zero-emission facility on an unused site while launching microtransit services in underserved neighborhoods. And in Yolo County, the Beeline on-demand service is filling transit gaps in a way that's flexible, affordable, and designed around community needs. The vision for the regional trail network is also gaining momentum, and local projects are leading the way. Just to name a few, Roseville's Dry Creek Greenway East connects homes and schools to the broader 70-mile trail network. The YOLO Active Transportation Corridors Plan is focused on low-income and rural areas with trails that double as economic drivers. And in Yuba City, they're seizing an opportunity to transform an old and unused rail corridor into a trail to connect neighboring towns, improve access, and support overall community wellness. Climate, sustainability, and resilience in action. Wildfires, flooding, and insurance availability are real and growing concerns. There's a shared urgency around building infrastructure that can support both emergency response and long-term sustainability. From fire to floods to droughts, resilience is no longer an option, it's essential. Balancing development and environmental preservation is a challenge and an opportunity that Placer County is taking very seriously. The county is home to several natural areas, and protecting these areas from overdevelopment while accommodating growth is vital to maintaining the county's character and economy. In Wheatland, the Yuba Applied Research Center is building a future of local innovation with UC Davis in the Beale Air Force Base by addressing climate and emergency response while also growing jobs and needed housing to match. And in Placerville, the Trip to Green project is an innovative and low-cost solution to congestion. And notably, the pilot project was launched early to support emergency evacuation on Highway 50 during the Caldor fire back in 2021. Funding and resources. So communities, especially smaller or more rural ones, are feeling the squeeze. Federal funding is unpredictable. We know that our gas tax revenue is declining, and many are looking for helps with grant writing and technical assistance. Around the region, many electeds express interest in some of SACOG's programs, things like Green Means Go, which is helping to bring infill in by paying for infrastructure needs. Mobility zones, which is helping advance transportation investments in underserved communities. Things like the Regional Trail Network that plans to add to connect our region through trail connections to make it easier to walk or bike. And programs like EEI or the Mega Region Working Group that partners with our neighboring regions to create a 16-county Northern California mega region. We also heard strong support for tools that SACOG provides, like the data modeling dashboard, and a desire to co-create more programs like that. Many of you emphasize how valuable our partnerships are, and you want more of them, more data tools, more advocacy, and more opportunities to learn about innovative plans and projects. There was a lot of interest in our peer region tours, like the trip our board took to Denver, Colorado. Many wanted to know how we can learn from what they did and apply those lessons in the SACOG region. From tax measures to addressing the homeless crisis to innovation, there's a lot to learn from our peers, and we plan to extend the invite for our next peer region tour to some of your elected colleagues. In addition, many were interested and expressed gratitude in our revolving board tour meetings in the region. One elected said, "It's been great to visit other jurisdictions, and it's great to have the region see our jurisdiction. Many think of us as a suburban community, so it's great to show off our diversity." So now we're moving towards the release of the draft plan and the environmental impact report for the 2025 blueprint. But your feedback isn't ending here. It's ongoing. We will continue these local tours regularly so that we can stay aligned and be responsive. And let us know how we can help your community implement its vision through funding, data, or technical support. Thank you again for your partnership. It's what turns a regional plan into real change on the ground.
Thank you, Hannah. All right, is there any questions or comments from the public?
There's no public comment.
Any questions or comments from board?
And I like the theme, so do appreciate that. My main question is this: I'm really excited about getting this out to the community and to my constituents, and have already worked on drafting some information. Now that it's going to go out for public comment, how do people engage in that process, and what can I tell them?
Yes, so like Clint had mentioned in his tour, we are hosting a series of public workshops in about mid-late June. And so we'll be linking back with everybody who participated throughout the process, and it's really an open invite, so anybody who's interested can participate. We're going to have 2 virtual options and then 1 in-person option, so we'll have a number of ways and days that people can participate and engage in that. And that is when we'll officially be releasing the jurisdiction highlights, which is the combination of projects that I'm speaking to.
Okay, wonderful. And then for the broader 2025 blueprint and EIR, is there a way for folks to just, let's say if they're not going to go to a Zoom or a physical location, for them to write in an email or?
Absolutely, absolutely. So we'll be accepting comments through email as well as written letters and
Great. So maybe there's a way you can send that to the.
Absolutely. We
Perfect.
can probably put together some like social media stuff as well, but there's a whole specific email address to email comments on the plan. And then of course you can reach out to staff as well. And then for your local staff, we'll proactively reach out to make sure we're hitting them so that they don't miss their chance to weigh in as well.
Okay. All right. The next item is information item number 5, a report on Cap to Cap trip and the SACOG tour. So this report is to report out items that allows board members to share updates from their trip to Washington, DC. Who'd like to start?
All right, Chair Baines, I've got a couple of photos here. I'm gonna dive into these. I know not everybody was able to join us in Northern Virginia, but our chair was there for a repeat tour. He loved the original one so much, he came back again. So just a few things, just show you a little bit. This may look like Denver on the left, but this is actually a fire station in Alexandria, Virginia, with affordable housing above it. This was a big hit last time we did a tour. Apparently, the fire department has an agreement to not put on any of its sirens until it's a mile from the actual housing development. That is part of a larger Potomac Yards, rail yards redevelopment, which I don't remember the exact acreage versus, say, the downtown Sacramento rail yards, but it is very similar. And so you see a lot of the housing in the top right corner there is beginning to redevelop and fill in a massive site right on the Potomac River in Alexandria. We also looked at an old commercial corridor, Columbia Pike, a very long, old commercial corridor that was a lot of single-story commercial and lower density housing that is now infilling and densifying. One of the tools they use along Columbia Pike in Arlington County, just across the river from DC, is a form-based code. In the middle picture here, you also see a pretty cool little urban design feature where rather than, this is retail and actually a Safeway grocery store on the left-hand side there, rather than wall off the strip commercial and the grocery store from the neighborhood, they actually did a really beautiful punch through. So you can walk from the neighborhood right into the commercial and the grocery. And on the right-hand side there is a pretty innovative housing, affordable housing and permanently supportive housing complex on Columbia Pike. And then finally, we went to Falls Church, a small incorporated city that can no longer expand, but is going up. This is also right in the border of Arlington County and Fairfax County. We met with the mayor and a lot of the staff and department heads there that were looking at, again, density and intensification in their commercial core while preserving a lot of their single family homes and townhomes in their jurisdiction. So pretty inspiring stuff. Chair Baines, I don't know if you want to add any other reflections, but it was a great tour. We had 30+ members. We had probably 12+ SACOG board members, alternates, but also a lot of other elected officials that are not typically engaged in SACOG, some newly elected officials from our region just before Cap to Cap. So a great opportunity. And I want to give a huge shout out to our amazing staff team, Mia Lopez, Rosie Ramos, Gabi Herrera, and Christina Lockie, who put this tour together. So.
I was just going to thank staff for doing such an amazing job. And again, like you mentioned, it was my second tour there, but there was a new group of folks. Like you said, they weren't only SACOG members of SACOG, but it was nice to see those nonprofits and that coalition and what they've been able to do to pull all this together. And I don't know if in the future that, we could invite groups like that out here to show them projects that we have where they could give us ideas of, where they pull the state and federal fund, well, obviously the state funding, but the federal funding and that assistance could come along to help us with projects in our communities.
And what Chair Baines is referring to is our tour guide for the day was a group called the Coalition for Smarter Growth. They've been around over 2 decades. They're a nonprofit coalition, and they actually are very involved in supporting a lot of development projects that sort of align with the regional plan. They go to council meetings, they do candidate education and really support a lot of these development projects. I think as Stuart Schwartz said, sometimes just having one person show up at your meeting to say yes makes all the difference. And Director Chapman this morning said we should bring him out here so he can give us some insights to our own region. That, I think the other takeaway, which many of you are familiar with, but we had concluded at the end of that day is just how long these things take. So the planning on the Potomac Yards and Columbia Pike started in the early 1990s. And there's a tipping point, a lot of these places, a lot of these corridors, a lot of these infill areas, which was a long time coming, right? But 20, 30 years later, they're beginning to really see that tipping point bear out.
Can you just briefly explain, I know the form-based code reference that you made with the Pikes area, is that the form-based code? Did they just designate a very specific area to avoid the controversy that comes with suspending all the, and I know the laws in California are very different than they are anywhere else in the world. But in terms of suspending or using a form-based code approach to do what they did, did they talk at all about the controversy or how difficult it was, or did they just minimize the footprint so they could keep it simple and get it done versus?
I'd have to get back to you, Director Villegas. They definitely talked about the fact that on Columbia Pike, it was controversial at first and it was very difficult. I would say Northern Virginia stands out in our minds as having a lot of very tapered density. In other words, like density on the corridor that quickly tapers off. The other corridor, we actually didn't get a chance to really see, but where we ended was the Roslyn-Ballston corridor, which is the orange and blue line right outside DC. And there you have remarkable density that within a couple of blocks goes to single family. And the single family residents were very opposed to the density.
Sure.
And now those are some of the most highest value single family homes in the region because they have so many amenities right there within a couple of blocks.
Well, so, okay, we'll take it offline. I just am curious about that because when you suspend all the rules, the laws, the regulations to get something done, it can be a monumental hurdle. And I just am curious if they spoke at all about how they did that, because there is some conversation here around the whole notion of form-based code development and what that would take. So that's fine.
Yeah, Director Chapman mentioned this morning, Davis, actually one of our Green Means Go grants that you've heard from is Auburn. So we've actually provided some resources for Auburn and form-based code. So we'd be happy to try to loop back and get you some information.
You know, it's another great SACOG tour. Looking forward to the next one. Right, and are there any public comments on this item?
There's no public comment.
All right. Okay, that being said, there's one item on receive and file for you to review at your leisure. If there's no questions on the receive and file, we can move to other matters at this time. None? All right, other matters. This time for any member of the board to provide updates or address issues for any item not on the agenda. If there are no questions or updates, then let's see, anybody have any comments or?
Nice
Right.
pause.
Chair
All
Chair
right.
Baines, at the risk of interrupting your incredibly efficient meeting, one thing in the board meeting is going to be May 29th, so a week on Thursday, 2 weeks today. We'll be doing our regular board meeting, but then right after is a lunch for those of you that serve on transit agency boards. So that is 16 of you, as we have made note. We've invited, all board members are welcome, but the 16 of you that are transit agency reps, we've invited all the 10 transit agencies in the region, and we've invited a guest speaker from the California Transit Association to talk a little bit about the state of play of transit in California. So if you are, those of you that are serving on those transit agency boards, I hope you have the calendar invite. It'd be great to see you on the 29th from 11:30 to 1.
All right. So now at this time, there's no further questions or updates. The Land Use and Natural Resources Committee meeting is adjourned. The next lunar meeting will be a Thursday, June 5th, 2025, 1:30 here in the SACOG boardroom. Thank you.